Encounters by a Senator's Wife, from Ghost Story Magazine, October 1929. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Dale Grothman. Otherworld Encounters by a Senator's Wife. I have been deeply interested in psychic phenomenon for some time, and am an enthusiastic member of a psychical research society. Years ago, I received my first thirst for this knowledge through the manifestations of my mother. At one time, a young artist had joined the circle in which my mother was interested, and for some reason or other, it was thought that his hand would be controlled to write if he would but try. At last he was persuaded to take up a pencil. Each one of the circle of young people would ask mental questions, and see if this young man would answer any of their questions intelligently. His hand began to move, and the pencil wrote rapidly. "Heaven is a happy place. Come to me, my child." No one understood the message, and the artist said that he would never try it again. A few days later, the landlady's daughter, who had been present at this meeting, rapped at the artist's door. "I want you to do me a favor," she began. "You answered my question the other night, and I hadn't the courage to tell you. I want you to promise me that you will sit down and write again under spirit direction." He refused. She begged him so piteously that at last he consented to try. He did not know what he wrote this time, as he did not read the message, but he folded it up and handed it to her, and she left the room without reading it. 3 days later she committed suicide. No one of her acquaintances knew that she had married and was living unhappily, and no one ever read that last message. Mother had an experience of her own that has always been an interesting psychic problem. Just before my grandfather's death, my mother had taken her turn to watch by the sickbed, while the other members of the family were resting. She sat quietly beside my father while he appeared to be asleep. Suddenly, she heard the appeal, "Up, up, up." She jumped to her feet and ran to the window and looked out. It was not yet daylight, and no one was in sight. There was no explanation for what she heard until a few years later, when the family was gathered at Greenwood Cemetery, where some bodies were being moved from the country for interment near my grandfather's grave. One of these bodies was that of her little nephew, a child of 5 years, who had died before my grandfather. The tombstone, which had marked his grave in the other cemetery, had been brought to Greenwood, and suddenly it attracted my mother's attention, as it bore an extraordinary epitaph. "Up, up, up," was the simple inscription, and it set in motion a train of memories that my mother had almost forgotten. "What does this mean?" she asked her sister, the mother of the boy. "Why," answered her sister, "when we were visiting father, the child used to go to his grandfather's door early in the morning, and as he knocked upon the panel he would say, 'Up, up, up,' until his grandfather would answer him, and somehow I thought of that when trying to decide upon an inscription for the tombstone, and so I selected the only words the child knew how to utter at that time. Mother felt then that this child's spirit voice was calling my grandfather at the time she was so mystified the night of his death, and had used the command with which he familiarly awakened him when he was there." The end of Otherworld Encounters by a Senator's Wife.
Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.